At 00:15 hours on June 6, 1944, a young German soldier named Heinrich Severloh meticulously cleaned the barrel of his MG-42 inside strongpoint, WN-62. In his pocket lay a letter promising his sweetheart a swift, victorious end to the war. Just 3 days earlier, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel himself had stood at that very aperture, surveyed the overlapping fields of fire over Omaha Beach, and nodded with cold satisfaction. "When they come," the Desert Fox had said, "this beach will be their cemetery." Through the concrete slit, Severloh saw nothing but serene darkness over the English Channel. Within 12 hours, that same soldier would be weeping in a bunker, surrounded by 13,500 empty shell casings, his gun barrel warped white from heat, witnessing a sight his mind could not process. This is not a story of Allied triumph. This is a declassified psychological autopsy of a defeat so total, the mathematics of industrial warfare rendered the finest tactical army on Earth irrelevant overnight. Before the psychological collapse, there was concrete. The Atlantic Wall stretched 2,400 miles, a serpent of steel and fortification that Nazi propaganda declared the most formidable defensive line in military history. It was a beast that had consumed 17 million cubic meters of concrete and 1.2 million tons of steel. Hitler himself branded it impregnable. At Omaha Beach alone, the defensive mathematics seemed to justify this arrogance. The U.S. Army Center of Military History confirms. The Germans had constructed 8 concrete bunkers, 35 pillboxes, 4 artillery positions, 18 anti-tank gun positions, 45 rocket launcher sites, 85 machine gun nests, and 6 mortar pits. The beach was transformed into a planned killing field, 3,700 obstacles planted in the tidal zone, Belgian gates, Czech hedgehogs, and stakes topped with teller mines. Behind them, 6.5 million mines lay buried. But here lies the fatal fracture in the wall. Colonel Ernst Goth of the 916th Grenadier Regiment calculated his batteries could deliver 120 rounds per minute into the killing zone. This perfect calculus of death assumed one critical variable: unlimited ammunition. That variable was about to be deleted by an enemy who manufactured logistics, like Germany manufactured weapons. The unmaking of the German defense began not with a bullet, but with a barometer. On June 5th, Luftwaffe meteorologist Walter Stoebe in Paris declared an invasion impossible. Wind speeds hit 25 knots. Waves climbed to 6 feet. Low clouds hung at 500 feet. Using data from U-boats and weather stations, Stoebe assured High Command the gale would last 2 weeks. Based on this unshakable Teutonic certainty, the defenders stood down. Rommel himself departed for Germany to surprise his wife with a pair of gray suede shoes bought in Paris. General Friedrich Dollmann, commanding the 7th Army, ordered division commanders to attend war games in Rennes. Naval patrols that normally swept the channel were cancelled due to rough seas. This was the first catastrophic miscalculation. Unknown to Stoebe, the Allies possessed a secret weapon he could not calculate: weather stations in Greenland that detected a 36-hour break in the storm. Group Captain James Stagg had identified a window where the impossible became reality. As German officers slept in their beds far from the front, Eisenhower seized that window. The meteorologist's confidence was the first domino. Every subsequent death on Omaha Beach was born from this single, fatal assumption of atmospheric safety. At 23:15 hours on June 5th, Freya and Würzburg, radar sets along the Norman coast began screaming. Massive aerial formations were approaching from the north, but the operators had seen this before. Allied deception raids designed to fatigue them. They logged the contacts and waited. By 00:30 hours, confusion metastasized into chaos. Reports flooded in of Fallschirmjäger, paratroopers, landing everywhere. but the reports made no tactical sense. Some units claimed British landings to the east, others, Americans to the west. None of them realized that dummy paratroopers dressed in burlap, rigged with firecrackers as part of Operations Titanic and Rupert, were amplifying a phantom army. Major Hans von Luck, commanding the 125th Panzergrenadier Regiment of the 21st Panzer Division, awoke to the sound of engines. He instantly grasped the gravity. These paratroopers were marking flanks for a seaborne landing. He requested immediate permission to counterattack. The reply from division headquarters was a death sentence. Do not move until the situation clarifies. Von Luck would later write, "I knew at that moment we were lost. Every minute we waited gave them time to consolidate. Yet we sat paralyzed by our own command structure. The paralysis of the Panzers had begun, and the invaders' boots had not yet touched the sand." Zo 5:30 hours. As the first gray light bled over the channel, German observers in forward pillboxes gripped their binoculars and saw something their training manuals had never prepared them for. From horizon to horizon, not water, but steel. Not dozens of vessels, not hundreds, but thousands. A gray carpet of war spreading across the sea like a biblical plague. The Allied invasion fleet comprised 6,239 vessels. That number requires a pause. 1,213 warships, 4,126 landing craft, 736 ancillary vessels, 864 merchant ships. It was the largest naval armada ever assembled in the history of human conflict. To the German defenders raised on propaganda of Allied weakness and division, the sight was psychologically devastating. Bernhard Furking, an artillery officer at WN-62 who would be dead within hours, reportedly turned to his men and said they were witnessing the whole world arriving on our doorstep. This was not a naval attack. This was a species-level migration of firepower. Then, at 05:35 hours, the horizon ignited. The naval bombardment commenced. Nothing in the German combat experience, not Stalingrad, not the heaviest RAF 1000 bomber, raids, had prepared their nervous systems for the kinetic shock that followed. The battleship USS Texas alone fired 255 14-inch shells at Point du Hoc en 34 minutes. HMS Warspite, the first ship to open fire, delivered death with 15-inch salvos. Concrete bunkers designed to withstand direct hits cracked like eggshells. Men were buried alive, dug out by comrades, and buried again. The psychological fortress of the Atlantic wall crumbled before the physical wall cracked. As the naval shells rained down, the defenders looked to the skies, waiting for the Knights of the Reich that Hermann Göring had promised would darken the sun over any invasion. They waited in vain. Oberst Josef Pips Priller, commanding Jagdgeschwader 26, received the order to attack the invasion fleet with his entire force. His response, recorded in the Wing's war diary, echoes through history as the epitaph of Luftwaffe power. What entire force? I have 2 planes. The Luftwaffe promised air superiority, mustered only 319 sorties on D-Day, against 14,674 Allied sorties. The ratio was 46-1. Priller and his wingman, Unteroffizier Heinz Wodacek, made the only Luftwaffe attack on the invasion beaches during the morning. 2 Focke-Wulf 180s strafed Sword Beach once, then fled at treetop level from the overwhelming Allied fighter screen. That single strafing run, 2 planes against an armada of thousands, became the tragic symbol of German impotence. The promised eagles who would rain fire on the wooden landing craft were dead or grounded for lack of fuel. The psychological effect on the defenders in the bunkers was terminal. They realized, with creeping dread, that they were utterly alone, abandoned to face the full weight of the world's industrial wrath. So 6:30 hours. The first assault waves hit Omaha Beach, and Heinrich Severloh began to fire. His position at WN-62, one of the few undamaged by the bombardment, commanded perfect fields of fire over the killing ground. For 9 hours, Severlo would press the trigger of his MG-42. The weapon fired at a blistering 1,200 rounds per minute. He would later claim in his 2005 memoir WN-62, Memories of Omaha Beach, that he fired 13,500 rounds. While his claim of inflicting up to 2,000 casualties is dismissed by historians as impossible, given that total. American casualties on Omaha from all causes numbered approximately 200-400. His psychological experience is the critical data point. This is where the German defenders began to experience what military psychologists term Materialschlacht, material shock. No matter how many Americans fell into the surf, more boats arrived. Every destroyed landing craft was replaced by 3 more. Every suppressed machine gun nest was targeted by a destroyer that moved in so close to the shore. The Germans could see the sailors on deck. The Germans were trained to defeat a limited force with decisive firepower. They were not trained to fight an enemy who treated casualties as a logistical variable. By midday, a new terror gripped the strongpoints. The ammunition counters were spinning toward zero. The perfect kill ratios, planned in abstract by Colonel Goth, were burning away in minutes. The defenders were running out of the ability to kill, while the enemy had not even begun to run out of men. The only German force capable of throwing the Allies back into the sea was the Panzer Reserve. Field Marshal Rommel's entire doctrine rested on defeating the invasion directly on the beach, with massed armor within the first hours. But the Panzer divisions remained chained by a fatal command structure. The 21st Panzer Division, the only armored unit close to the beaches, did not receive orders to attack until 1,000 hours, 4 hours after the landings began. When they finally rolled toward the coast at 1620 hours, they found the inland roads transformed into a labyrinth of airborne ambushes. They reached the shore between Lyon-sur-Mer and Luc-sur-Mer around 1900 hours, the only German armored unit to touch the coast on D-Day. But then, at 2100 hours, they witnessed Operation Mallard, 250 gliders, bringing reinforcements to the British 6th Airborne Division. Interpreting this massive air armada as a threat to their flanks, the Panzer crews withdrew in confusion. The division lost 54 tanks in a single day. The counterattack also encountered specialized, Allied armor they had never seen before. Hobart's funnies, flail tanks that whipped chains to detonate mines, flamethrower tanks that turned bunkers into crematoriums. These were not weapons of a decadent democracy. They were weapons of a technological superpower. The mathematics of German defeat were no longer written in strategic assessments. They were being forged in the flaming hulls of panzers on the road to the sea. As the tactical situation disintegrated on the beaches, the German nervous system suffered a total seizure. Allied aircraft systematically destroyed communication lines. The French resistance, activated by coded BBC messages, cut telephone cables and destroyed relay stations. Radio frequencies were jammed into a screaming hell of static by Allied electronic warfare units. General Lieutenant Max Pemsel, Chief of Staff of the 7th Army, attempted to coordinate the defense from his headquarters at Le Mans. His war diary records a horror unique to modern command. Increasing isolation as entire divisions vanished from the communication network. He was commanding ghosts. By noon, unit commanders were making decisions in total isolation, firing at shadows, holding fire for fear of hitting their own men. The 716th Infantry Division, which bore the brunt of the British assault, reported to 7th Army headquarters as darkness fell. Division combat strength 35%. All coastal strongpoints lost. Artillery 90% destroyed. Enemy advancing inland. This was not a retreat. This was a liquidation. The German command structure, designed for micromanagement by a Führer asleep in his Alpine retreat, could not react to a threat that moved at the speed of democracy's industrial output. They were still processing the morning landings while the Allies were already building harbors on their beaches. If D-Day was the tactical shock, the days that followed were the strategic annihilation. The Germans discovered that the Allies had not just invaded, they had industrialized the sea itself. The Mulberry artificial harbors were assembled, discharging 15,000 tons of supplies daily, more than the entire German army in Normandy consumed in a week. Meanwhile, German reinforcements attempting to reach the front encountered a concept they had never faced: complete interdiction of movement. Every road, railway, and bridge was under constant attack by roving fighter bombers, who owned the sky absolutely. The 2nd SS Panzer Division, Das Reich, stationed near Toulouse, embarked on a journey that should have taken 3 days. It took them 17 days to reach Normandy. They arrived having lost 30% of their vehicles to air attack, without firing a single shot at a ground enemy. The psychological impact was devastating. If elite SS Panzer troops couldn't even reach the battlefield intact, how could they influence it? Hans von Luck's Panzergrenadiers, finally released to counterattack towards Sword Beach, advanced in darkness. They were immediately illuminated by parachute flares from naval spotter planes. It was like daylight, von Luck wrote. Every vehicle, every soldier was visible. The shells came from the sea with perfect accuracy. We lost half our strength without seeing a single enemy soldier. The Germans were not fighting a war. They were trying to swim against a tsunami of steel. Even in the abyss of defeat, German tactical brilliance flashed briefly. On June 13th, SS Obersturmführer Michael Wittmann, the deadliest tank ace in history, parked his Tiger in the village of Villers-Bocage. In 15 minutes of savage fury, he destroyed 13 to 14 tanks, 2 anti-tank guns, and 13 to 15 personnel carriers. Propaganda seized on this lone victory as proof that German arms could still prevail. But Wittmann's stand reveals the grim arithmetic better than any defeat. His Tiger tank, disabled in the action, was a catastrophic industrial loss that Germany could not easily replace. The British losses, a full motorized company, were replaced within hours from the endless parks of vehicles on the beach. Wittmann himself, with 138 confirmed kills, was killed on August 8th by a Firefly tank of the Northamptonshire Yeomanry. The Reich's greatest warrior was erased by an enemy who could afford to trade 10 tanks for his one and still call it a victory. The age of heroes had passed. The age of factory floors had arrived. Operation Cobra, beginning July 25th, delivered the knockout punch. The U.S. Army Air Force dropped 4 to 100 tons of bombs from 1,500 heavy bombers, 380 medium bombers, and 550 fighter bombers in a concentrated area just 7,000 yards wide. General Lieutenant Fritz Bayerlein, commanding the Panzer Lehr Division, reported to Army Group B, "My division is annihilated. The psychological effect is indescribable. They are no longer soldiers, but broken men." The bombardment was so cataclysmic, it accidentally killed Lieutenant General Leslie McNair, the highest-ranking American officer killed in the European theater, observing from what was thought to be a safe distance. If American generals weren't safe from their own firepower, what chance did German conscripts have? Then came the Falaise Pocket, a cauldron of fire where the retreating German 7th Army and 5th Panzer Army were encircled. Roads were carpeted with dead horses and burning vehicles. Allied fighter bombers attacked in waves every 20 minutes. Artillery fell continuously. 10,000 Germans died. 50,000 were captured. Over 300 tanks were destroyed. The destruction was so absolute that many soldiers simply sat down and waited for captivity, preferring it to the industrial death raining from the sky. The final accounting of the Normandy campaign tells a story that renders the entire Nazi ideology a mathematical absurdity. German losses from June to August, approximately 320,000 casualties, 30,000 killed, 80,000 wounded, 210,000 missing or captured, 2,300 tanks destroyed, virtually all armor in France, 2,127 aircraft lost. Allied losses, 29,672 casualties, with replacements exceeding losses daily. 4,000 tanks lost, replaced within weeks. 4,901 aircraft lost, from a force exceeding 13,000. General der Infanterie Heinrich Eberbach, who assumed command after Rommel was wounded, reported to OKW on August 1st. The enemy's material superiority is at least 20-1 in artillery, 10-1 in tanks, and absolute in aircraft. He can replace all losses within days. We cannot replace anything. Field Marshal Rommel, in his final report to Hitler on July 15th, 2 days before being strafed and critically wounded, wrote the epitaph of the German army. The troops are fighting heroically everywhere, but the unequal struggle is nearing its end. I must beg you to draw the necessary conclusions without delay. This was military code for complete defeat. Heinrich Severloh, the machine gunner of WN-62, spent his later years meeting American D-Day veterans. "We all realized," he wrote, "that we had been young men thrown into an industrial slaughterhouse. My 13,500 rounds meant nothing against their unlimited replacements. The Germans had brought courage and tactical brilliance to the beaches of Normandy. The Allies had brought unlimited industrial production. In trying to hold back the Allied invasion, the defenders might as well have been trying to hold back the tide with their bare hands. The beaches of Normandy were not just a battlefield, they were a revelation. The soldiers of the Third Reich, raised on myths of racial superiority and martial destiny, witnessed the future of warfare. They discovered that in the age of industrial conflict, nations that could not match their enemy's production were doomed to defeat regardless of their soldiers' skill, bravery, or sacrifice. They began June 6th as warriors of the 1,000-year Reich. They ended it as witnesses to the arsenal of democracy in its full, terrifying efficiency. The Atlantic Wall did not fall to a lack of courage. It fell because the mathematics of modern war had rendered that courage irrelevant. Heinrich Severloh fired until his barrel melted, watched endless waves of replacements land on his beach, and finally understood. His enemy had not just invaded France. His enemy had mechanized victory itself. The question that haunts history is not how Germany lost the battle for Normandy. The question is, what happens to any army, any nation, that challenges an enemy who has turned war itself into a production line? The answer lies in the empty shell casings, the warped barrels, and the weeping eyes of a machine gunner in a concrete bunker, watching the world he served crumble. Not under tactical genius, but under the sheer, unstoppable weight of factories 3,000 miles away.